Hey, how you doing? How's my lovely people? How y'all feeling? Comment below. Let me know how you feeling. Hope you're doing great. Your girl is doing great. I can't complain, okay? Even though it's cold outside. I went outside today. It was sunny, but it was cold. You know, of course, it's that time of year. But I can't wait for spring. Okay? I just can't wait for spring. I like to be warm. I don't like to be cold, y'all. I like to be warm. I mean, it's a little warm in my house, but I don't know. I do like to be warm. I like to have my windows up, and I like when the warm air just comes in. I don't know. I just love it. Love it, love it, love it. But anyway, let's talk about Amsterdam. Y'all know I want to go visit it so bad. I don't know why. I just want to visit. Why Amsterdam is removing 10,000 parking spaces? Is it because they're trying to, I guess because there's more people riding bicycles than driving out there. I heard that driving out there is like, it's good, but I heard it's very expensive, and plus it's more convenient. When you ride your bike, I heard it's more convenient and cheaper, and it's healthier. Okay, let's not forget that it's healthier too. And plus it's fun. Forget about all that. It's fun. You know, I would love to ride my bike going places, but obviously I don't. Everything's kind of close to where I live, because y'all know I live in New York. I live in a city, so everything I need is around me. But anyway, let's get straight to the video. This is a very long video. It says 19 minutes, so yeah.
When we moved to Amsterdam in 2018, the municipal elections had just finished. One of the political parties is GroenLinks, basically the local Green Party. As part of their election platform, they promised to remove 10,000 parking spaces from the streets of Amsterdam by 2025. But, of course, when the election was held, they won a landslide victory. Well, as much of a landslide as you can have in an election with over a dozen parties. They're the light green on this map. This was quite a difference for us, having just moved from a city where a major election promise was to spend about half of the entire transportation services budget, over $3.6 billion, to rebuild a single 1960s elevated expressway through downtown. Well, the rest of the roads looked like this. Car infrastructure is horrendously expensive. But anyway, election promises are one thing. What's the reality? Did Amsterdam really remove thousands of parking spaces? Well, yes, they did. And it's pretty great. Well, mostly.
So what about,
I've followed urban planning issues across many cities for many years, and one of the things that's almost universal is that removing parking is contentious. After the motorific 20th century, car owners are very, very, very entitled and feel that they're owed cheap or even free parking everywhere they go. But parking generates a lot of problems too, so many cities are trying to reduce it. That's easier said than done though, and as the saying goes, when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. And boy, are drivers ever privileged, even in Amsterdam.
yeah.
Look at a typical street like this one. In Amsterdam, only about 40% of households have a car, but you'd never know it by looking at this. Almost every street is lined with parked cars, which means that a minority of people are consuming a majority of the public space that could be used for more productive purposes. Unfortunately, street parking brings with it a lot of problems. Besides being ugly and taking up too much space, street parking can be dangerous too. A line of parked cars reduces the visibility of side streets, leading to predictable crashes, and cars coming out of parking spaces results in an increase in crashes too. And anyone cycling along a street like this is at risk of serious injury or even death if any one of these drivers opens their car door without looking. Drivers getting in and out of parking spaces also disrupt traffic, which worsens congestion on the street. On commercial streets, it's often argued that street parking is necessary for businesses, but the math doesn't really add up. There's only space for 1 or 2 cars outside of most shops, and even if these spots are turning over every 30 minutes or so, which they're not, There's no way this can bring in enough revenue to make a substantial difference to most businesses.
Why didn't he turn his car?
City Beautiful made an excellent video recently where he talks,
driver,
among other things,
I'm trying to figure out
about
why
the
he
revenue
didn't turn his
potential of
wheels
commercial street parking spaces.
before he.
In most cases, replacing
everybody's
street parking
parked
within a
different.
city with, say, a protected bicycle lane is almost always better financially. For example, during COVID, Toronto converted many of its street parking spaces into extra restaurant seating, and a recent analysis showed those patios brought in almost 50 times as much money as the parking fees they replaced. Another problem with street parking is that it's usually far too cheap, so it gets occupied quickly. There have been studies showing that in some neighborhoods, 30 to 40% of all traffic was just drivers cruising to find cheap street parking. To deal with this, you'd ideally want to increase the cost of street parking to match demand, and San Francisco tried this with their SF Park experiment, which automatically changed the price of street parking to maintain a 60 to 80% occupancy rate. This experiment worked brilliantly and was beneficial in almost every way, but drivers complained about the uncertainty of how much it would cost to park. And that's in addition to the typical whinging about price from entitled drivers, but we already knew that would happen. So a flat rate is generally more accepted, and here in Amsterdam, street parking prices were increased across the city. For example, it now costs €7.50 per hour to park in the city center. But that doesn't really get rid of the parking spaces, it just reduces their demand. In most cities, street parking is just an accepted reality. We have come to expect that almost every street is lined with parked cars. But does it really have to be this way? Japanese cities took a very different approach. Here in Tokyo, for example, there is very limited street parking, and the maximum time is usually only 1 hour or less. Most importantly, it's forbidden to park your car on the street overnight. Japan also has a proof of parking rule. If you want to buy a car, you need to prove that you have an off-street parking space for it in order to get it licensed. This is why Japanese streets look the way they do. They can get away with much narrower streets because there's no need to accommodate car parking. On a street like this, all traffic can mix together because speeds are so slow here. This is also why so many people ride bicycles in Japan despite there being very little bicycle infrastructure. These slow, narrow streets are already safe enough for many people. But come on guys, you gotta do better on big roads like this. So removing street parking can significantly improve the look and feel of a city and makes it easier to build great urban places. Of course, whenever a proposal is made to reduce car parking, many people start listing off a long list of reasons why street parking is absolutely essential and can never be removed. But let's be honest, most of the time this is just concern trolling. The people making these arguments don't actually care about the reasons they cite, they just want to keep every possible parking space. But they know saying that out loud makes them sound like an entitled jerk. But there are legitimate reasons to park a motor vehicle sometimes, and Amsterdam has exceptions for many of these cases. For example, on a street like this, there are designated spots for loading and unloading, and despite the picture showing a truck, you can park your personal vehicle here too, for that one time of year you actually use all that space in your SUV. There are also spots for car share cars, which are great and becoming increasingly popular in Amsterdam, and I talked about that in a previous video.
Oh, I gotta watch that video.
There are also shared cargo bikes like this one, which I like even more because so many trips that people think require a car can be done quite easily with a cargo bike.
That's cool.
And there are some designated spots for disabled parking too, though Amsterdam also does a lot to ensure that people with physical disabilities can get around in other ways, which can increase their independent mobility. Because what most people fail to acknowledge is that a huge percentage of the disabled population can't drive. So after taking all of this into account, this is what it looks like. This shows that it is possible to cover the corner cases needed for car parking without having to line every street with ugly metal boxes. By now you may be thinking, how did Amsterdam actually pull this off? Did they just dump all the cars into a canal and call it a day? Well, no, not exactly. They've actually tested several methods in different parts of the city.
What is this?
The most common method is...
Wait. What did I just go ignore what we just saw? Like, what is going on? Where did he get this clip from? Wait, I'm sorry, y'all. I need to go back because I need to find out what is going on here. Is this a movie?
Did they just dump all the cars into a canal and call it a day?
What is... No.
Well, no, not exactly.
What?
They've actually tested several methods in different parts of the city. The most common method is attrition.
That is
Every street parking
crazy.
space requires a permit, so as people give up their parking permits, for example, because they've sold their car or moved out of the city just doesn't grant a new permit. So over time, the problem just works itself out. So that frees up around 1,000 parking spaces per year, but that's not quite fast enough, so Amsterdam is trying other methods of speeding up the process. For example, Amsterdam is taking advantage of street redesigns in order to remove parking spaces. This is Koninginnenweg, a
beautiful
relatively busy
neighborhood.
street in Amsterdam South. When this construction is completed, it will be much safer, especially for people cycling, and it will be reconstructed with around 140 fewer parking spaces. And I featured this street, Kinkerstraat, in my most dangerous
People in Amsterdam must be in good shape. Y'all have to be in not good shape, great shape. Because y'all ride your bike everywhere. And it's cheaper, it's good for the environment, it's healthy on your heart, it's healthy on your body. Because you're moving around, you're cycling. So it's very, very healthy. And here in New York, we have people who ride bikes here too. But not as much as you see here in Amsterdam.
places to cycle in Amsterdam video. This redesign will provide much more room for people cycling and will also remove 27 parking spaces in the process.
Yeah.
There are many other construction projects underway across the city, and wherever possible, the street is rebuilt with fewer parking spaces than before. In other cases, cars have been removed for practical reasons. The center of Amsterdam has a lot of canals, and some of these canal walls are hundreds of years old. This has caused a maintenance nightmare, with many walls at risk of collapse.
I could imagine.
There is a huge maintenance backlog, but one way of extending the life of a canal wall is to remove the heavy stuff from on top of it, and the best way to do that is to remove street parking. There are several places where street parking has been removed along canals, and there is a long-term goal of removing all car parking along canals throughout the city center. This will certainly improve the look of these places.
I just realized too, y'all have a lot of boats too. So it gotta be easy to be able to, move around because you have the bikes and you have boats. I'm just now noticing that. I mean, I've seen boats here, but you have a lot of boats, a lot.
Places, but it will also provide more space for walking and cycling. This is Oude Wal, which literally just means old wall. A really clever name there, guys. All street parking has been removed along the canal here. Presumably, this will be redesigned in the future, but in the meantime, residents have installed their own planters and decorations. I love seeing this parking payment machine stranded here. And here is an electric car charger no longer accessible for charging. I wonder what they'll do with this.
So I'm saying.
So
costs a lot
this
of
gets
money,
rid of
too.
a few more parking spaces, but it's still not enough to get to 10,000 spaces. So the city is trying other methods of removing parking more quickly. One trial was attempted on this street in Amsterdam Oost. In 2019, all of the parking was removed and there were temporary planters and bike parking installed. The idea here is that residents would love the new street so much they wouldn't want the cars to return. For some streets this can work, but it needs the buy-in from the majority of residents. For now, the trial is over and this street is back to the way it was before. That doesn't mean that it was a failure though, it's just the end of the trial. There are plans in the works for a redesign of this neighborhood, so maybe that'll have to be a future video. Another method was attempted here in the streets along the Frans Halstraat in De Pijp. Here, street parking was removed in the whole neighborhood all at once. The space was used for more trees and greenery, lots of bicycle parking, small
Did he just fall?
playgrounds, and
What is going on with y'all over there? What? I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'm trying to learn more about this whole parking spaces, but I'm getting distracted because I'm seeing people. This guy just fell, and we're not gonna pretend like we didn't just see what we just saw. And he had coffee in his hand. Oh my God, poor guy. And something I wanted to say, but oh my God, I forgot what I wanted to say. Oh yeah. I love to see more greenery. I'm a tree girl. I'm a grass, flower, plant type of girl. I love to see more of that. I said this before in another video. I'm tired of all these high buildings and all these cars, and it's too much. Like, I want to see more trees, I want to see more green, I want to see flowers, I want to see plants, I want to see cute little animals roaming around. Like, I want to see more of that, you know. So I love this whole idea of getting rid of a lot of cars. I'm quite sure some of y'all who are drivers, you know, y'all don't agree with this, but I personally love this. I love it. I love the idea of it.
Other uses. This current design is temporary, but plans are moving ahead for a permanent design, and I'll definitely cover this in a future video when this work completes.
Yes,
The
let us know.
result of this transformation
Look how
is
beautiful this is.
incredible.
Look at this. Look at the trees.
Look at this street. It feels busy and claustrophobic. Now
Yeah.
compare it to this. This street looks large and inviting. But this is
It does.
exactly the same street, only a few meters away. I've come through here dozens of times,
Look at
but
this.
it never ceases to amaze me.
Look how beautiful
What
that
an
is.
incredible difference it makes
Yes,
to
look
get
at it.
rid of the cars.
Yes, look at the grass. I mean,
So where did the cars go?
The
Well, they're
plants.
right here. No, not in the water.
God, that's good B-roll.
and can you
A
imagine? I'm sorry. Can you imagine how the air is gonna smell, and you're gonna feel this fresh air that's going through your lungs? A beautiful. It could be a rainy, gloomy day, but it's still gonna be a beautiful day, if that makes sense. You could breathe. You know what I'm saying? You're riding your bike. That's healthy. It's good for your health. You know, it's good for everything. It's safe. This is a beautiful thing. I'm loving this, y'all. I wish New York could be on the same page with this. They need to.
Level parking garage was built under this canal that has space for all the removed cars, and then some. This is a pretty great parking garage, and it has a huge number of electric car charging spots as well, which
This is a
makes
good
me
idea.
wonder just how much electrical current this garage would pull if all of these spots were in use at once. There is bike parking too, but only space for 60 bicycles. It's clear that residents are expected to park their bicycles in the space freed up on the street. So this is great, right? The streets are so obviously better, and this is now one of my
But don't
favorite
they be
neighborhoods
stealing
in the
bikes
city.
out there? That's why people park their car.
300 parking spaces
their
were
bikes
removed to
inside
make these
those
streets as
places?
great as they are. But this parking garage has space for 600 cars. And it costs 35 million euros, which is almost 60,000 euros per spot. But the residents who live nearby can get a parking space in this garage for the same cost as regular street parking. That's a pretty big subsidy to drivers. As a point of reference, Amsterdam only spends about 70 million per year on bicycle infrastructure, so this one parking garage is equivalent to half the entire cycling budget for a whole year. As usual, car infrastructure is horrendously expensive. But back to the topic at hand. If 300 parking spaces were removed on the street, but 600 were added in the garage, does this count as removing 300 spaces or adding 300 spaces? Well, it turns out the goal of removing 10,000 parking spaces is only referring to on-street parking spaces, so this still counts as 300 removed spaces. Now, don't get me wrong, this is still a really great goal. There are many good reasons for removing on-street parking, and the less of it we have in our cities, the better. But off-street parking causes a lot of problems for cities too. Actually, Climate Town has a great video about this. The biggest issue here is that the more parking you have, the more driving you have. And I've heard anecdotally that people in this neighborhood are now more likely to drive because of this parking garage. Before the garage was built, the limited parking on street would discourage people from taking their car as they might not be guaranteed a good spot when they returned. But now that the garage has been built, people are more likely to take their car even for short trips. One fundamental problem with Amsterdam is that the city center is just not good. Yes, I know it's crawling with tourists and has too many waffle shops, and waffles aren't even Dutch, people, but that's not what I'm talking about. If you look at almost any
Not
other
Dutch
city in the
people.
Netherlands or even Germany, the city center has a pedestrianized area. Heck, Brussels, which is a place I try to forget I lived in, has significantly expanded their pedestrianized city center in recent years. Unfortunately, Amsterdam only has a handful of pedestrianized streets, and cars are allowed pretty much everywhere in the city center. And so every weekend, you get this line of cars coming into the 17th century canal ring. If there's one thing I've learned from visiting hundreds of cities around the world, it's that the vast majority of people will take whatever transportation method is the fastest and most convenient. If you make trains the most convenient, then most people will take the train. And if you make cars the most convenient, then most people will drive. But as with any rule, there are always exceptions. For example, there are some people who will choose to ride a bicycle even though that's a completely illogical and even dangerous thing to do because the roads were not designed for it. And similarly, there are some people who, no matter how painful and inconvenient it is, will insist on driving, even though the city center is not designed for it. Unfortunately, the people who insist on driving create a lot of problems for everyone else because they take up a huge amount of space and make the streets more dangerous for everybody who isn't inside of a metal box.
True.
Now, this is about the time
Yeah,
the driving
TJ Maxx.
apologists
I
will
love
chime in,
TJ
claiming that
Maxx.
all of these people have to drive because they have no other choice and need a car for some reason. Thankfully, the NRC actually stopped and asked people why they were driving into the city center. Were they all bringing their poor disabled
Maybe
mothers
because they
out
live
to the
far?
canals for a sunny Sunday? No. They were just driving because that's what they felt like doing.
People love to drive.
One group said they were at the Amsterdam.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I love to drive because, you know, you're in your car, you're in your own personal space. No one's bothering you. You know, plus if it's raining outside, at least you shelter. You know, you have covered. And plus, you know, you're in your car. You want to listen to some nice music. You want to relax. I don't know. It's driving. That's the only thing I like about driving. You're in your own personal space, and that's what I love about driving. But like I said, to have that type of convenience and that personal space costs a lot. Gas and all these stuff to maintain it, to park it, and all the other stuff that come with it. So yeah.
Rye Convention Center, a place with one of the best park and ride garages in the entire city, and a direct metro line that literally brings you right to this location within 5 minutes. Instead, they sat in traffic for an hour and a half to get here. There was only one guy they interviewed who really needed to drive because he was helping his son move into a new apartment. Of course, he had to sit in traffic that shouldn't have even been there if these people had just taken the metro like everyone else. Do normal, jongen. The majority of this traffic every weekend comes from people shopping, especially at the Bijenkorf, a high-end department store. And what allows these people to do this is this parking garage, which holds over 400 cars. This is a textbook example of parking generating traffic. As long as this Q Park garage is here, there will be people wanting to use it. Thankfully, Amsterdam is starting to do more to reduce car access to the city center. 1 block away from this dumpster fire is this street, recently converted into a small park. It even has grassy tram tracks, my favorite. Here's what it looked like before. It's amazing to see what can be done with the huge amount of space normally consumed by cars.
Nice.
There is still some work underway here, but when all the work is done, there will be 77 fewer parking spaces along this street. So far, Amsterdam has removed over 4,000 parking spaces with a few years to go until 2025. As some of these construction projects complete, this number should increase quickly, though time will tell if they reach the original 10,000 target. These changes will make a hugely positive impact on streetscapes all across the city, and while removing street parking is not a full solution, it's still a big step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Now the next step, let's turn this ugly thing into housing.
All right, y'all, so that was the end of it. That was good. It was a long video, but I'm glad what they're doing. I like that. This is why I would love to visit these type of places, because these are things that I've been thinking about for a while. Even though I live here in New York, I'm not thinking about Amsterdam, but I'm thinking about stuff that I see here in New York. It's good to see that they're doing something. Amsterdam is doing something about it. They're listening to their people, and they're seeing things for themselves, and they realize, you know what? Yeah, we want this place to look more pleasant and more inviting, and we want to make it easier for the people, and they're doing something about it. Here in New York, you know, like I said, we need to take notes. I will definitely do more of these type of videos. So this is from Not Just Bikes. So make sure he teaches he shows a lot of stuff they're doing in other countries, and especially in Amsterdam. So make sure you go and check his videos out. He gives you so much information. And I will definitely do more of these type of videos. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and check these videos out. And I will see you lovely people. Take care. Peace.